My name is Ethan Carter, and I spent 12 years of my life building Carter Sons Automotive from the ground up, convinced it would all one day be mine. Turns out, the only thing I inherited was the realization that loyalty to the wrong people can leave you with nothing. Let me tell you how I got there. At 34, I had sacrificed birthdays, holidays, and every relationship that ever meant something for the garage. My father, Richard Carter, opened the shop back when I was a toddler. Some of my earliest memories were of the scent of engine grease and the sound of socket wrenches clinking on concrete floors. While other kids were playing with action figures, I was sorting bolts by size in Dad's tool chest. I always knew I'd run the shop one day. Dad used to joke, "You've got oil in your blood, son." That pride shaped every decision I made. I studied mechanical engineering, declined jobs in the city, and came home to help grow the business. From the start, I threw myself in head first. I streamlined inventory systems, introduced online booking, added mobile diagnostics. Business boomed. Customers loved our efficiency and personalized service. In 10 years, we went from 3 employees to a team of 15. We opened 2 more locations, one in Ashdale, one in Milltown. I negotiated both leases, hired every manager, and trained all lead mechanics. Dad retained the CEO title, but I did everything short of changing light bulbs. Not that I minded. I believed in legacy. And then came Max. My little brother, Max Carter, 3, years younger, laid back, charming, more interested in graphic design and chasing startups than in spark plugs or brake pads. He dropped out of college after a year, floated through a series of business ideas, and lived in California for most of his 20s. Then, at 30, Max moved home to help the family business. At first, I welcomed it. He was blood. He brought fresh branding ideas and had a decent eye for digital marketing. He designed a sleek new logo and rebuilt our website. I appreciated the help, even though he worked maybe 20 hours a week and took long lunches while I handled supplier. Negotiations and payroll, I figured fine. I was the builder. Max could be the face. There was room for both of us, right? Wrong. The first red flag came when I noticed Dad and Max huddling more frequently behind closed doors. I'd pass by the office, hear laughter, and catch whispers. Whenever I entered, the conversation would pivot to sports or weather. Still, I trusted my father. That was my biggest mistake. I discovered the truth on a Wednesday afternoon, 2 weeks after I returned from a brutal 3-week stretch at the Milltown branch during a staffing crisis. My dad had asked me to find the company tax forms in the East Side, safe to prep for our annual audit. As I sifted through folders, I came across a thick, neatly labeled binder. Carter & Sons Transfer Agreement. I wish I could say I had a bad feeling, but I didn't. I wasn't suspicious. Not then. I thought it was maybe a plan for succession, but as I flipped through it, my stomach flipped. Inside were signed, notarized documents transferring 70% ownership of the company to Max. I blinked. Read it again. Max Carter, 70%. Richard Carter, 30%. Ethan Carter, 0% nothing. Not even a symbolic stake. Not even a courtesy signature. I stood there for what felt like forever, the edges of the paper cutting into my fingers. I took the binder and walked straight to my father's office. He looked up from his desk, smiling like it was just another Wednesday. "Find the tax forms?" I tossed the binder onto his desk. His face dropped. "Ethan, you gave him the company?" My voice was steady. My heart was not. "Look, son," he said, sitting back, folding his hands. "It's not what it looks like." "Then explain it." "Because it looks like you handed Max 70% of the business I've worked 12 years to build," he sighed. "Max has potential. He brings in the youth factor. He understands digital. The future is online." I stared. "I doubled our revenue in 5 years. I negotiated every lease. I built the mobile service model you now praise at conferences. And I get nothing?" "You're overreacting," he said, too casually. "This doesn't change your role. You're still operations lead. Nothing's different day to day." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Except I work for my little brother now. Ethan, he said, trying for a calming tone. This was a strategic move. No, I snapped. It was betrayal. I walked out of the office in a haze. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just left, mechanically, like I was watching someone else move through the shop, past the tire racks and oil drums and the mechanics I trained. They greeted me like normal, and I nodded back like nothing had changed, like my world hadn't just collapsed. I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly around town for hours. The same town I'd refused to leave so I could carry the Carter legacy forward. The town where I gave up friends, relationships, and personal goals, where my best memories were of building something I believed would be mine. That night, I called the one person I knew would understand. Her name was Claire Donovan. We dated in college, nearly got engaged, but parted ways when she moved across the country for law school. We stayed in touch. She was smart, level-headed, and brutally honest. Ethan, she said, surprised. It's been a while. I need your legal brain. That's a first, she teased, then grew serious. What happened? I told her everything. She listened quietly, asking precise questions. Did you ever sign anything? Any paperwork about ownership, shares, contracts? No, I said. It was always verbal, promises from my dad since I was a kid. She sighed. I'm sorry. Legally, that's tough. If he had full control before the transfer and didn't grant you any ownership on paper, there's not much recourse. So he can just write me out of the company I built? Legally, yes. Morally, it's garbage. I closed my eyes. Look, she added, if you want out, we can talk about compensation for your labor, maybe argue unjust enrichment. But if you want to stay, if there's a future for you there, you need leverage. Leverage. I hung up shortly after, mind racing. The FAR. Next day, I didn't go in. I turned off my work phone and ignored 3 texts from Max. Hey man, can we talk? This doesn't have to change anything. Please don't bail. I didn't respond. Instead, I began documenting everything I had done for Carter Sons. Every contract I secured. Every system I implemented. Every process I redesigned. I listed names of clients I had personal rapport with, clients who'd followed us through 2 expansions. I gathered spreadsheets, reports, emails, all proof of my value. On the 3rd day, I walked into the shop like nothing had happened. Max looked relieved when he saw me. Hey, can we talk in the office? I followed him, closed the door. He fumbled with a coffee mug, trying to sound casual. Look, I didn't want it to, go down like this. Dad told me he'd been thinking about transferring ownership for a while, said I had potential, a fresh vision. You knew I had nothing? He hesitated. Yeah. I thought he'd talk to you. I figured you were just being chill about it. Chill, I repeated. You knew I got nothing and you thought I was just okay with that? He winced. I sat across from him, staring hard. Max, I built this place. You designed a logo. That doesn't make you an owner. It makes you a contractor. He opened his mouth, but I continued. I'm not here to yell. I'm here to offer you a choice. He blinked. A choice? You want me to stay and fix this mess? You give me 30% ownership. Legally. Binding contract. I want veto rights on major financial decisions, a seat at the table, and a real title, co-director of operations. That's a big ask, he said slowly. You think I'm bluffing? I stood. I walk, and half our client base follows. Me out the door. Johnson Towing, Bayview Logistics, Silverline Cabs. I'm their guy. You're just the other Carter. Max looked rattled. Dad won't go for it. Then you two can enjoy bankruptcy together. I left him sitting hot. There, stunned. 3 days passed, no calls, no texts. Then Dad showed up at my apartment. He didn't knock, just waited outside, pacing. I opened the door reluctantly. Can we talk? He asked. I let him in, said nothing. He stood in my living room like it was foreign soil. I didn't mean for it to come out like that, he said. I crossed my arms. Ethan, I know you've done everything. I do. But you and I, we're too alike. You'd run this place like I did. By the book. Max brings a different energy. We need that. You gave him 70%, I said flatly. I was trying to prepare the company for the future. You could have prepared both of us. He sighed. You're right, I mishandled this, but it's not too late. He handed me a folder. I opened it slowly. Inside was a new draft agreement. Ethan Carter, 35% ownership, co-director of operations. Max Carter, 50%. Richard Carter, 15% silent advisory role. I looked up. I convinced Max, he said. Told him it was either this or lose everything. I said nothing for a long time. Finally, I asked, why didn't you just give us each half? Because I know you, he said, a ghost of a smile. You'll lead better with something to prove. I laughed once. Always managing, he looked around. Place looks nice, cleaner than your old bedroom. I didn't reply. I'll leave you to think, he said. You have the weekend. I signed the papers Monday morning, not because I forgave him, not because I trusted Max, but because it was mine, finally, undeniably, on paper. 35% of something I built with my own hands. The next few weeks were tense. Max tried to bridge the awkwardness with coffee breaks and team lunches. I played along, but I kept my guard up. Then something unexpected happened. Max started, showing up earlier. He took meetings seriously, asked questions, listened. And when I rolled out a new system for parts tracking, he didn't fight me. He praised it. One Friday, he stayed late finishing an invoice batch. I peeked into his office. Didn't know you knew what a calendar reminder was? He grinned, learning from the best. We both laughed. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. By the end of that quarter, Carter Sons had stabilized. Client. Retention was strong. Our reviews online were glowing, and internally we'd reduced parts waste by 20% thanks to my new inventory system. But the biggest change wasn't on paper. It was in how Max and I worked together. To my surprise, he started pulling his weight. He still had his quirks, random brainstorms at 3 a.m., dramatic Spotify playlists blasting while updating our blog, but he stopped treating the shop like a side hustle. He showed up for staff meetings, negotiated a supplier discount I'd been chasing for months, and even sat in on a few client consultations. I didn't say it out loud, but I was cautiously impressed. Still, I couldn't shake the mistrust. The memory of that binder, the ownership transfer behind my back, was never far. One Thursday afternoon, Max invited me to lunch. I've got something to show you, he said, tossing me a helmet as we walked to his bike. It's a surprise. I hesitated. Is this some marketing stunt? He grinned. Not this time. We rode for about 20 minutes to the industrial edge of town, stopping outside a vacant lot with a rusted sign, Future Site Oak Point Center, he pointed. That's where I want the next Carter Sons. I blinked. You're planning a 4th location? He nodded. Not just planning. I've got investors interested. I wanted your input before I pitched anything formally. I studied him. You want me in from the start? Of course, he said. We're partners now. The words hung in the air. Something shifted in me. A small piece of the wall I'd built up cracked. We sat on the hood of his truck and mapped out a dream. Shop, solar-powered lifts, on-site detailing, a modern lounge with coffee and co-working booths for customers. I offered logistical insights. He tossed in branding angles. It felt right. We didn't solve our history, but we began to shape a future. That night, I called Claire again. She was in Chicago now, working for a major firm. You sound lighter, she said after I recapped everything. I think we're finally becoming the brothers we never were. About time. We chatted for an hour, and just before we hung up, she asked, Are you happy, Ethan? I paused. Getting there. 2 weeks later, everything blew up again. It started with a phone call. Mr. Carter? Said the voice. On the line. This is Renee from Dominion Fleet Services. I wanted to confirm your new pricing structure before we finalize the agreement. I frowned. Pricing structure? Yes, Max Carter said you were switching all commercial contracts to a flat-tier system starting next quarter. I never approved that. Oh, I see. He said you had. My stomach sank. I'll call you back, I said and hung up. I stormed into the shop. Max was in his office chatting with our accountant. Can we talk? I asked sharply. He followed me into the hallway. What's this about Dominion's contract change? I demanded. He looked sheepish. I was testing out a flat-rate model, figured it could streamline our billing and reduce disputes. You didn't tell me? I was going to... No, I interrupted. You made a major pricing decision for our top 3 clients without even discussing it with me. I thought you'd overanalyze it, he said. You always shoot down my ideas before they breathe. Because I care about consequences. I snapped. His jaw tightened. I'm trying to help us scale, Ethan, then act like a partner, not a dictator. That night, I sent an internal memo freezing all contract changes until reviewed jointly. Max didn't speak to me for 3 days. The silence broke when our father called a surprise meeting the following Monday. Enough, he said, slapping a folder on the conference table. You two are grown men, not toddlers fighting over Legos. We both looked away. You want this company to succeed? Then act like it. You've got staff watching you, clients catching the tension, and suppliers walking on eggshells, Max muttered. It's not my fault. Don't, Dad said sharply. It's both your faults, because you haven't learned how to communicate. He turned to me. Ethan, you've always been the engine, reliable, focused, but you control too tightly. Then to Max. And you're the steering. You see where we should go. But you take turns too fast without warning. He sat back. You need each other. Period. Max and I didn't speak again until Friday. He found me in the break room, staring into a stale cup of coffee. I'm sorry, he said. I messed up with Dominion. I exhaled. Thanks. He sat beside me. I didn't think you'd trust me if I pitched it first. I might have. I was starting to. He nodded slowly. I just wanted to prove I belonged. You do, I said, then added, but not at my expense. He winced. Fair. That night, we stayed late and reworked the contract model together. Combined my data with his ideas. Found a middle path. By morning, Dominion signed off and added another year to their contract. In the weeks that followed, things improved. We set rules. No unilateral decisions. Shared calendar reviews. Weekly owner strategy sessions. Max even suggested rotating weekend coverage to give staff more time off. I watched him grow into a version of himself I hadn't believed existed. One afternoon, our lead mechanic, Jose, pulled me aside. Boss, he said, you and Max figured it out, huh? We're working on it, he grinned. Shop's running smoother. Everyone notices. I nodded. Appreciate it. Then he added, it's not just a family business anymore, it's a team. Those words stuck with me. That night, I sent Max a simple text. Good work today. I meant it. He replied, thanks. Man, I meant it too. We weren't best friends, but we were finally business partners. The new version of Carter Sons began to take shape. We launched the redesigned service tiers Max had envisioned, this time with my oversight on the financial models. We rolled out a loyalty program that boosted repeat business by 25% in 3 months. I handled back-end integration and workflows. Max coordinated the digital campaign and visuals. One Friday morning, after finalizing the Oak Point expansion proposal, I found myself staring at our company logo embossed on the front of the binder. For the first time in years, I didn't feel bitter or burned. I felt proud. Max and I had found our rhythm. Then Claire came back into town. She was speaking at a business law seminar downtown, and she texted me out of the blue. Coffee after my talk? It's been too long. We met at a quiet cafe near the river. She was radiant as ever, poised, confident, warm. You look good, Carter, she said, smiling. Less haunted, I laughed. Guess some wounds do heal. We talked for an hour. I filled her in on everything, how things had shifted with Max, how Dad finally stepped back, how the Oak Point site was moving forward. She leaned across the table. You know, when you called me that night, I thought you were finally done with the family. I was. And now? I paused. Now I'm building something on my own terms. Not blindly loyal, just committed with boundaries. She nodded. That's growth. I walked her back to her hotel and, on impulse, kissed her cheek before leaving. She didn't stop me. That night, Max noticed the grin on my face. Who's she? He teased. An old friend, I said. Hope she's not another contract we have to negotiate. I smirked. She might be. By early spring, Oak Point was underway. We broke ground mid-April. Max managed the creative direction and branding. I oversaw permits, budgeting, and equipment procurement. Dad came by the site one morning, a cup of black coffee in hand. You two did this, he said quietly. Better than I could have. It was the first time I'd heard him say anything. Like that. He looked older, more tired, but also more at peace. Like someone who finally realized letting go wasn't the same as losing control. Thanks, I said. Means a lot. I was wrong back then, he added, not looking at me. About the transfer, about how I handled it. I swallowed. Took you long enough. He chuckled. Yeah. We stood side by side, watching the framing crew hammer in rhythm. I used to think you needed to be ruthless to survive in business, he said. Turns out you just need the right partners. He looked at me. Glad you didn't walk. So am I replied, surprising myself. Max and I fell into a good pattern. We split decisions according to strengths. He began hosting monthly staff appreciation lunches. I implemented a flexible scheduling system. Turnover dropped to record lows. People were excited to come to work again. At one point, I caught Jose showing a new tech around the garage. You're lucky to be here, he said. Bosses are different now, they actually care. I pretended not to hear, but it hit me. That weekend, I had dinner with Claire again. We talked late into the night, and when I walked her back to her apartment, I kissed her fully this time. She smiled and said, Took you long enough. Yeah, I said. That's my line lately. We started seeing each other regularly. She wasn't the girl I remembered from college. She was better, sharper, more grounded. And I wasn't the same guy either. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I was finally building a life I chose. Then came the Ashdale fire. A faulty breaker sparked a blaze in our second location. No one was hurt, but the damage was severe. Thousands in losses. Equipment fried, insurance delays. I rushed to the scene that night, Max arriving minutes later. We stared at the blackened remains in silence. This could break us, he whispered. No, I said. It won't. We spent the next 72 hours in overdrive, filing reports, securing temporary equipment, relocating staff to Milltown and main branch rotations. Claire helped us file for expedited claims, using her contacts to push through red tape. 3 weeks later, we held a fundraiser for our staff who had lost personal gear in the fire. Local clients flooded in. Donations poured out. We raised more than we ever expected. Max stood on the temporary stage that night and raised a glass. To resilience, he said, and to my brother Ethan, who refused to let us fall apart. The crowd clapped. I looked at him, stunned. He stepped down, grabbed my arm, and added, I mean it. None of this works without you. I didn't say much in response, just nodded. But inside, something settled. All the years of betrayal, of bitterness, they didn't vanish. But they softened. After the Ashdale rebuild was complete, we threw a reopening event. The mayor came. Local businesses sent congrats. Max presented the new design, sleek and modern, with a photo wall honoring our staff. One panel featured a shot of me and Max at the construction site, hard hats on, arms around each other's shoulders. Beneath it was a small plaque that read, Built from nothing, together. I didn't cry. but I stood there longer than I should have. That night, Claire took my hand as we watched fireworks from the rooftop of Oak Point. "You did it," she said softly. "We did," I corrected. "Funny," she said. "Your story used to be about what they took from you. And now? Now it's about what you reclaimed." I kissed her, grateful, for the fire, the fallout, the failures. Because without them, I wouldn't have found what mattered. Summer rolled in with clear skies and fresh energy. The Oak Point location opened in June, exactly 1 year after Max and I first sat on the hood of his truck and dreamed it up. It stood proudly with its solar panel rooftop, polished steel signage, and an interior so clean you could eat off the shop floor. We held a soft launch, inviting longtime clients, press, and local vendors. My dad even showed up in a Carter Sons baseball cap, sipping lemonade and grinning like a proud grandfather. Max gave the opening speech. I stood behind him, not looking for the spotlight, just appreciating the moment. He turned midway through his address and motioned to me. And of course, none of this happens without the guy who kept us together. My brother, Ethan. The man who builds foundations even when no one's watching. There were claps, a few cheers. Claire squeezed my hand from the front row. I wasn't good at public gratitude, but I nodded and said, "Thank you," because that's all I needed to say. Things weren't perfect. Of course they weren't. Some days Max still ran wild with overambitious promos or botched marketing lingo, and sometimes I still got too tight-gripped about logistics and pushed our team too hard, but we corrected faster. We respected each other more, and most importantly, we had created something neither of us could have done alone. Dad formally retired in August. He signed the last of the transition paperwork and handed us both envelopes with personal letters inside. I haven't shared mine with anyone, not even Claire, but I will say this. It was the first time he ever truly said he was sorry. Max got teary-eyed reading his. "You okay?" I asked. He sniffed, wiping his eyes with the sleeve of his flannel. "Yeah, for the first time, I feel like I've earned this." "You have," I said honestly. "You really have." By fall, we began discussing our next big move, franchising. We were cautious. Neither of us wanted to dilute what made Carter Sons unique. But we also knew there was room to grow if we trained franchisees right, protected our values, and maintained control over the brand. Claire stepped in again, this time officially. She became our business counsel. Then, more unofficially, my partner in every sense. We moved in together by Thanksgiving. Our place was small but cozy. She filled the bookshelves. I handled the kitchen. We argued over whose coffee was stronger. She always won. One evening, after we wrapped a long zoning meeting over Zoom, she sat beside me on the couch and asked, "Do you ever wish it had gone differently?" I knew what she meant. The betrayal, the painful transition, the years of tension. "No," I said. "Because if it had, I wouldn't be who I am now, or where I am." She smiled. "Good answer." Max surprised me at New Year's. We were wrapping up shop operations when he pulled me aside. "I'm proposing to Tessa." Tessa was his girlfriend of 2 years, a nurse, smart, grounded, with a dry sense of humor that perfectly balanced Max's impulsiveness. "Congrats," I said, shaking his hand. "I want you to be my best man." I blinked. "Seriously?" "Yeah," he said. "You're not just my business partner, Ethan. You're my brother." I couldn't help it. I hugged him. He hugged back. The wedding was held in the spring. I stood beside him in a gray suit, delivering a short but heartfelt toast. "When we were kids," I said, "I used to think Max was the reckless one and I was the responsible one. But building Carter Sons together taught me something. Courage comes in all forms. Max had the guts to dream out loud. I had the patience to see it through. Together we found something better than what either of us imagined." Tessa cried. Max cried. Even Dad sniffled. It was a good day. The years that followed moved fast. Oak Point turned into a case study for sustainable auto business design. We franchised 2 more locations, each carefully selected and trained under our shared system. Max led branding workshops. I ran operational boot camps. We disagreed sometimes, but never like before. Not from a place of ego, just from a desire to do right by what we'd built. Claire and I got married in a small garden ceremony surrounded by friends, family, and, yes, even Max's crazy in-laws. Jose was there. So was our first employee, Dana, now a senior manager. During the reception, Claire took the mic. "I married a man who once thought his worth came from proving himself," she said. "But I fell in love with the man who realized his worth was already there. He just had to see it." I cried that time, unapologetically. It's been 5 years since the day I found that binder, the day I thought everything was stolen from me, and in a way it was. But what I've built since then, that's mine. The legacy I thought I had to inherit, I created it from scratch, with grit, forgiveness, and time. I learned that family isn't about blind trust. It's about honesty and mutual respect. That loyalty isn't owed, it's earned. And that the hardest things to rebuild often become the strongest. So yes, I devoted my life to the family business. But now it's a business that reflects my values, my leadership, my name. Carter & Sons still shines on the signs. But when people walk through those doors, they see something different now. They see heart, teamwork, integrity. They see the story of two brothers who almost lost everything and found something better instead. And when I walk through that door, every morning I no longer feel bitterness. I feel pride because I didn't just reclaim what was mine. I made it better. If this journey moved you, inspired you, or kept you hooked till the end, don't forget to like the video. It really helps us grow. What would you have done if you were in Ethan's shoes? Drop a comment below. I read everyone and love hearing your take. Hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss an emotional, powerful story that might just change how you see the world.